which in the current period have become a magnet for tourism. So we have relative strengths in the decision-making arena in the biophysical sciences. But some of our constraints, though, is that these pristine areas of wilderness have really been built on the backbone of very perverse and cruel incentives or ideals where indigenous communities have been moved off the land to make way for the development of protected areas. Industrialization and in urban areas has also placed the poor downwind of environmental externalities. And the environment, one of the legacies of apartheid is that the environment is still viewed in decision-making as a biophysical entity. And there's been quite a strong divide that persists between green and brown issues, where there's quite a big tension between our strengths in terms of understanding and knowing the facts, with brown issues which require us to understand questions of diversity, culture, emotions, etc., much more deeply in order to tackle those sorts of issues. Okay, so given this backdrop then, in thinking about some questions around leadership, here are a couple of comments that a few quotes that I've put together from our leadership in South Africa when the new environmental impact assessment legislation was introduced in 2006. Our former president, Mbeki, said that EIAs were causing development delays that had contributed to quite a considerable slowing down of economic activity. Our housing minister, Lindiwe Sisulu, made the comment, "We cannot forever be held hostage by butterfly eggs that would have been laid, because environmentalists would care about those things that are important for the preservation of the environment, while we sit around and wait for them to conclude their environmental studies." So what we see here is amongst our leadership in South Africa quite a big divide in terms of the understanding of the environment in a broader, more holistic sense, where the environment is still seen as a constraint to development. Okay, so in thinking about what is the scope then for an interdisciplinary approach, to me some of the key challenges are, and someone yesterday actually spoke about this briefly, I think it was someone called John Cusack, where he spoke about this need to elevate debates of the environment out of the green ghetto. In South Africa, as I think in this context as well, debates about environmental issues occur amongst the same people, the same institutions, it's always the same sorts of people. But we need to mainstream these issues into the media, into public consciousness, into schools, etc. So it's not, you know, we can't continue with business as usual in terms of always having these discussions amongst the same people. One of the other key challenges is about realigning the relationship between the state, society, and the environment. And given we've just had elections this week, and the direction that the country is going in, I think that these questions of the relationship between the state, society, and the environment, and building up relationships of trust, is becoming an ever-increasing challenge. One of the other issues that I think is a key issue that we need to be dealing with is the empowerment of the state and society to ensure that the state is able to be responsive to pressures that is being put on it, as well as society being responsible, making responsible citizens. And one of the key elements of this is also exercising moral judgment in making decisions between brown and green issues. Where we've got to move away from just understanding green issues as facts, but moving into the political arena around the brown agenda. So some ideas about the kinds of things that need to be in our curricula in order to support the kinds of challenges that we are facing in South Africa. I would argue that we need to be looking at things like development and social political theory, economic theory. We need to understand the facts, the scientific fundamentals of climatology, geomorphology, biogeography, conservation, etc. But also, equally important, this question of ethics and philosophy that Eben raised yesterday, questions of policy analysis and some hard skills around GIS and spatial analysis. Now the question, reflecting on yesterday's discussion, the question is if we can roll all of these skills and others that I haven't thought about into our graduate students, are we creating leaders who will tackle the challenge of the 21st century? I don't know. Okay, in terms of what we actually do at WITS, I'm in the School of Geography, Archaeology and Environmental Studies, and one of the big advantages of being in a School of Geography is that the discipline of geography is interdisciplinary in and of its nature. So we do work in the social sciences, in the hard sciences, in environmental sciences. So in and of itself, it is an interdisciplinary discipline. At a graduate level, we train students at an for honors and master's degrees, MScs. We don't have, as I said earlier, we don't have a program that has as its objective interdisciplinary teaching, but we have a number of courses that are interdisciplinary, as well as a few others like climatology, paleogeomorphology, geomorphology, etc. And I'm just highlighting here the interdisciplinary courses. And what I've done here is to try and show what are the diverse skills that we're trying to impart upon trying to teach our students, as well as where the students are actually from. You'll see in under environmental management, for instance, apes. These are not lesser evolved people. These are students who are engaged in animal, plant, and environmental studies, as I think one of your students here has come from that school. So we have students in all our courses, and I run a course called Environmental Policy and Practice at a graduate level. Other colleagues run other courses, environmental management, environmental education, conservation, biogeography, GIS, advanced GIS. And in all of these courses, we attract students from a number of other faculties. We attract students from the public sector and the private sector. And as I said, we're trying to teach a range of skills within these courses, which all contribute finally to an honors or a master's degree, MSc, in environmental studies. Okay, so our students, what do they then do once they've graduated from us? They move on to work in the following areas: in NGOs, in advocacy around environmental issues and development issues. Into the public sector, we have a large number of students who move into government, both at a local, provincial, and at a national level. The private sector, education, some students remain to do PhDs, others become teachers or academics. There's a burgeoning industry around environmental impact assessments and practitioners, students moving in to be environmental impact assessment practitioners. The various human mining, science, research councils, food security, etc. Now, to conclude, I just wanted to reflect a bit on the very stimulating discussion that we had yesterday afternoon about leadership. And and I sort of asked myself the question, are we at WITS creating leaders for addressing environmental change into the 21st century? And I felt quite intimidated by this challenge yesterday and thought, well, this is quite a big ask. Is the idea or perception of leadership that we're trying to train graduates to appear on even slide together with Plato, Churchill, Nelson Mandela, is that what we mean by leadership? I'm not sure. And certainly I wouldn't claim to be producing the next mugshot for that slide. However, I think that that's a debate about, and that's an ongoing discussion that we'll have over the next day and a half about what is it that we mean by leadership.